Welcome back. It's time for Press Review, and joining me is our usual Friday panel. Philip Magal is a lawyer, Joy Brenda Medivo is an advocate, and Mark Bichachi, a communication consultant. Welcome to the show, lady and gent. Let's take a look at what's making headlines. Well, let's start off with the Standard. Today you told Raila My big fight with Ruto, and fresh from a meeting with Mount Kenya leaders, former Prime Minister opens up about the frosty relationship he has with the DP, and he said we were on different sides of the struggle for a new constitution. Today we have differed on my decision to work with President Uhuru Kenyatta, which Ruto views as a plot against him. All that the President and I want is a more equal and united country. Mark.
You know, the thing is about BBI, this handshake and the whole thing. If you introduce one filter called 2022, then the story changes for you. And that's really where this conflict is coming from. If Raila Odinga is a candidate in 2022, then William Ruto perceives him as someone to be beaten, not someone to work with. And you see, working with your potential enemy becomes a political hot potato, as it were. But also let's remember that a lot of our politicians are used to adversarial competition. And by adversarial, I mean name calling. And you see how funny it is that one will call another a mrogi, another one a trickster, and then complain and say, why are you insulting me at your meeting? Yet they call the other the conman and things like that. Political so it is something that they do so often that I think they're having a failure in translation, as in how do we become adversaries in 2022 but work for the betterment of the nation now? Because they do not disagree on the fundamental principles of uniting the country or any of the big points of BBI. They disagree on whether Raila is running in 2022. That's the crux of the matter. And then on top of that is this sort of political entitlement that our political elite seems to have gotten.
So between the two, who would be?
Both of them are quite entitled. I'll give you an example, right? When you say that people are trying to stop me from becoming president, what else should your opponents do? You know, I really don't understand which democracy is this. It's only natural that if I today stood to be president of this panel and we only 4 of us, there'll be opposition. So this crybaby thing of people are trying to stop me, what else in God's name should they do? Should everyone support you? And that's the problem. So we need to call these politicians out for what it is. They're the ones who are divided. Kenyans are not divided. And they need to just stop the gimmicks, you know, and just face the reality. Deliver BBI, and if they can deliver it this year, then they can start their politics next year.
Now, the breaking points are being highlighted on page 8 of the Standard. We are told they differ on the contents of the Constitution of 2010, differed also on the issue of climate change and need to conserve Kenya's water towers. That's the Mao story that was all over the place last year. Then we have they have disagreed over the decision to work with President Uhuru Kenyatta through the March 9th handshake. Obviously, this is the very prominent difference that we have witnessed and has been making headlines throughout last year, actually since the handshake took place. And now, Joy, what's your take on this? Why they're forever fighting?
But they've not been forever fighting. There's a word Mark likes using, his enemy, and I keep telling him that's for politics, it's not in the vocabulary. In politics, there are interests. So allies or people who are not allied. Because believe me, tomorrow if Ruto and Raila find a point of convergence,
it'll probably be
handshake reloaded, and we'll all be like, who'd have thunk? Politicians are these people who let me just use street language, they're born of the same mother. As far as politics is concerned, they have the same genre. So they get to a place where once something aligns to their interests, then
I'd have to stop you because there seemed to be a problem with your audio, so I'll get Magal's take, and then you just hold your thought, and then I know you're on a roll, and then we're going to take you later on.
Yeah, it seems Joy is quickly losing on the contest to be the president of the panel.
Yes, my operatives are at work.
They're enemies.
Mark must be overworking on that.
Okay.
An interesting photo here on page 8 of Raila meeting two governors, two influential figures from Central.
Yes.
And I think this is what really worries Ruto. Only that this time he seems to be on the receiving end, he seems to be holding the shorter end of the stick.
Yeah.
He seems to be reacting to everything that Raila is doing. Since the inception of the BBI task force, he seems not to be dictating the agenda. And to me, that is not really, it's not good for his image. We've seen what he's done this week. He's done our night a turnabout, and now says he's joining the BBI.
Right.
You know, his team has really become small over the past 2-3 weeks.
His allies?
Yeah, we saw, whereas sometimes he would walk about with about 40, 30, 50 MPs from his Tanga squad. I think now the squad has condensed or has frozen into about 20 individuals. And I'm sure some are thinking of scattering as well. And that is cause for worry. And that is why, you know, he's so bitter against Raila. And I think his strategy really is failing him. He should have been on board as regards BBI from the word go. He's been opposed to it. And eventually when the matter came to a head in Bomas, he said he supports Bomas draft. I mean, he supports the whole initiative.
Right.
Then these people say they are going for a referendum. Instead of saying he supports referendum, he was against referendum. The other day he saw I think he saw the crowd in Western, and he's had a turnabout again. Now he's saying he's supporting the BB. I wonder what he will do next once he gets to Coast and things are not as he planned. Ruto should get off the back foot and find a way that he can instead dictate the agenda going forward. He shouldn't be in a position where all he can do is wake up, talk about Raila, all he can do is wake up, talk against BBI. And you know, this against some of the major agendas of his boss as well.
Sure.
So he's been as well speaking against his boss. Now my worry is if indeed the president is sincere about the BBI and the need to put the country on a proper footing, if the president is indeed sincere on corruption, if the president is indeed sincere on his big four, where does that then leave Ruto? I think he really needs to reassess his position and picks his fight wisely.
Wisely. What do you think this spells for his political future, given that obviously some of his stance might be going against his bosses, and his boss then obviously is working closely with former opposition leader Raila Odinga? So what does it spell for his...
I come from Ruto's stronghold, that is West Pokot, and I've been speaking to residents, and the last 2 weeks they have really been worried, you know. The man has absolutely been isolated. We saw that in Kakamega. It is evident from the turnaround by Murkomen saying that they will join the BBI rallies. I wonder what they will be going to say there. Are they going to say that we support the initiative in total? Are they going there to say we don't support you people going around the country in these rallies? Are they going to say, you know, as things stand today, and we've seen other initiatives being taken by central government like investigations into some of his alleged corrupt dealings in the past. Of course, like the case where they say that he participated in the selling of a piece of land in which was government land in Gong Forest. Of course, it cannot be reopened. But I think those whoever is doing that is either softening the ground or sending him signals that, you know, you have an Achilles heel, and if we were to come for you and come for you hard, we will get you.
Okay, Joy, what's your take?
I have a slightly different view from what how Philip sees it. The BBI brigade started their campaigns in areas where it was quote-unquote a stronghold. And if you saw the BBI rally in Western, it looked more like an ODM rally than a multi-party initiative. And so for Ruto to be completely sidelined there is no biggie. But I think once the schedule came out and it was apparent that some of the rallies were being organized in places where they considered the stronghold, then it made strategic sense to also get involved in the fray. And on that corner, I agree, because you realize, you know what, if this wave comes and it comes to areas that are my stronghold, and I am nowhere to be found, it's the same thing, I think the same reasoning that persuaded Mudavadi and Wetangula to turn up at Bukungu. I mean, this is my home turf. Even if I'm not part of this brigade, I must appear. You know, if somebody enters your bedroom, the worst you can do is just sit in the corner and make sure, by the way, you better still know, still my bedroom.
This is mine, yeah.
And I think that's what he came alive to.
Yes.
But over and above that, the thing that also, I think, is the pigs, the chickens that are coming home to roost. He talked about the dwindling numbers that are going around with Ruto. It has been rumored, alleged, that the people who are being targeted in this fight against corruption are people who are allied to DP Ruto. Now, the problem with that is if you know you've got issues and you don't want the spotlight on you, then you keep it a little bit in the shadows so that you don't end up in the firing line. The problem with that, though, is it cements this thing about our leaders not being totally genuine about being behind the fight against corruption. Because if you yourselves are afraid of the light being shown on you, then it means who amongst you can we trust? But in the particular scenario that Ruto finds himself in, and Honorable Raila, none of them is coming out clearly to talk about 2022, but all of us can see this is about 2022. And I like the word that Mark used. If you use a 2022 filter, then all these things, you can never look at them at face value. Yes, we want inclusivity. Yes, we want what? Unity, but if you put the filter, then this inclusivity is for the sake of boosting numbers, or is it really for bringing Kenyans together? And so on that score, I'm hoping Mombasa will prove some of us wrong, and our leaders to actually show a genuine united front. Because I'll tell you something, if the spirit of the BBI is actually implemented, Kenya will be so much the better for it.
Yes.
But if it's just lip service and it's a public show just to gather momentum, I mean, this is a rally for all these people paid for by the government. None of them has to spend money mobilizing. This is being paid for by the taxpayer themselves.
Right.
I mean, what that sort of mileage, they all want to cash in on it.
Yeah, and
so I hope they're genuine.
You know, just to join issues with my colleague here, you know, you remember the Tanga wing had also planned their rally in somewhere in Western, isn't it?
Yeah.
Not that they were locked out of the Bukungu Stadium rally, but you remember there were only 3 people there being tear gassed. There was there was not a single boda rider that you would expect there. There was not a single bicycle rider that there was not even a single busybody. Even a chokora was not there. There were 3 individuals running around
the receiving end.
And I think that sent a serious signal, you know, that, you know, probably things are not as we are thinking they are. Right. We may not be as popular as we think we are. We might not be in a position to compete with the state machinery. And if you can't beat them, what do you do?
Join them.
And just to comment on that, you need to understand what Jubilee mathematics has been in 2013 and 2017. Jubilee mathematics has been 100% of Kalenjin land, 100% of the mountain, and then a sprinkling from everywhere. When the mountain is shaking and seems divided, and you also predict low voter turnout, and then you've spent a lot of money, and Boni Khalwale has guaranteed you that he can move masses, and twice in Kibra and now in Mumias, the only people he can seem to master, to join him, is himself and himself. You find it hard to continue with that gamble because it seems to be a gamble that's not paying.
Right.
And if you look at the coast, who is Aisha Jumwa able to mobilize?
Right.
So when you look at it for your own political survival, you must then join with the whatever seems to be a bigger thing. And you know, I want to correct Bagal on just one small point. Raila has never needed state machinery to gather a crowd. If there's something Raila needs, listen, in this country, and don't write to me and tell me I've joined ODM. I've never joined ODM. But the fact of the matter is this, that if you look at Raila Odinga, he remains the only politician who gathers a crowd without paying, him and Sonko. Everyone else gotta pay. So you can't take Raila's enigma and ability to mobilize away from him.
Yeah, this is true. And there's so many other stories related to this. If you look at page 7 and 6, we're having Coast Governor warning Ruto allies over rally. We are ready for the BBI rally and we will welcome all, but there is no room for political contest. Then we have stop behaving as if BBI is your property. DP tells off some leaders. And the Daily Nation is still focusing on all that. We have BBI unstoppable. Raila says play down talks of chaos. And then how Uhuru, well, that's on the judiciary. But then there's the main topic that is quite interesting. It's on the DP, and they say there is a plan to send me back to The Hague. Under siege, Deputy President William Ruto speaks out on his relationship with President Uhuru Kenyatta, his stand on BBI, why the economy is struggling, and what ODM leader Raila Odinga's political shift means for Kenya. And this was an exclusive they had on last night. Your take on this?
I think Deputy President William Ruto is caught between a rock and a hard place. And it's a rock and a hard place of his own making. I'll give you an example. A lot of why he is perceived to be against the president is because his lieutenants, who he said last night are not his lieutenants, but the people around him seem to blatantly speak against the president.
Okay.
In fact, Ndindi Nyoro tweeted the other day alluding to an impeachment against the president. Then at the same time, he must present himself as the most supportive deputy president one can have. And that puts him in a very tight spot because he is both for BBI and against BBI. You know, he's like Schrodinger's cat. He's alive and dead at the same time. And what that does is, in terms of wielding a narrative and telling a coherent story, then either you have to have a lot of gaps or you have to have a lot of side issues to distract from the main narrative that you're pushing. And therefore, it becomes important for him, and I'm talking as a strategist, to create as many red herrings as possible. So he's basically like, oh, look, the Hague story is coming back. Because you've got to try that because it helped you in 2013. Then you say, oh, look, there's someone trying to stop me. Then you say, oh, look, it's dynasties versus hustlers. You know, and you know, the same way he says, is it okay when I supported him, I was not corrupt, and now I am corrupt? It's the same thing when he was supporting dynasties before. Did Uhuru become a dynasty yesterday? So all of these things, if you look at the real strategy that's going on, what is the communication angle that they're looking for? Is they're throwing so many waterbouts so that one of them sticks and then the people of Kenya follow. That's really what that is about. Because if you remove the Hague, they're trying to stop me, dynasties, then you are left with him having to explain how is he both supporting the president and not supporting the president. And that's the conversation that he has to run away from helter-skelter.
Joy.
But you know, sometimes I feel for these politicians because when we have these people called lieutenants who have a brain and a tongue of their own and their own, I mean, sometimes I look and oh, if you hear Orengo speaking, then it must be Raila. If you hear Murada speaking, then sometimes I feel for the quote unquote, the people who are being spoken for. Because what happens when people speak out of turn and it's not what you intended to, if you had been given the opportunity?
Then you correct them.
The problem is,
like Uhuru has differed with Murade.
In terms of political mathematics, sometimes it doesn't add up for you to openly defy. You may have a private talking to and tell somebody, don't ever do that again. But the word is already out there. And I'm thinking, and I agree with Mark, when you look at the deputy president's camp, quite a few of his lieutenants, and I don't know where we got that word from, but it sounds so nice. You have lieutenants. Many of them have spoken quite out of turn. I mean, from Alice Wahome to, and especially the ones from Central. Until you wonder, is it a sabotage? Is it, are they really in the camp? What is it? Is the enemy within? But at the same time, when you look at the deputy president's words alone, they're not in consonance with what some of these things that said.
The allies are saying.
And then now that leaves you wondering, what is the truth? Where does it lie? And this becomes very difficult to distill. The problem that I find with this entire scenario is, in the midst of all this political noise, we've lost the important thing, the main thing. We're supposed to have leaders who are working for us.
True.
We have a big four agenda to deliver. We are working on this big BI manenos. We have real issues that Kenyans are facing. The economy is in shambles. But look, even your headlines are still
all about
colonized by the shenanigans
Yes.
rather than
It's
by
true.
what really matters to Kenyans.
Yeah.
And for me, I find that to be a bigger loss because the more time they spend politicking, the less time they spend working. And at the end of the day, if you see what the Kenyan voter does, and we send majority of our MPs home, it's our leaders are not learning that, you know, you don't work for us, we send you home. We've sent them home quite a bit.
Right.
But the ones who come in, the moment they come in, forget about the electorate and start
Back to
supporting some alignment or other. I don't know. I wish we could find a way as Kenyans now to really look at the law again, about especially the recall clause, and have a situation where if my MP is talking, if I look at the voice pops and even the Hansard and everything, most of what you are doing is defending somebody or other. I should be able to say, you know what, if you want to go work for Ruto, resign, go work for Ruto. If you want to work for the president and forget about that, we are the ones who elected you. Because at the end of the day, we have such a disconnect between our leaders and our people. But be that as it may, there's something also to be said for party discipline or the lack thereof. Most of these things should be dealt with on at an in-house level. There should be somebody calling out the MPs and saying, you know what, you're a sitting MP for this government. You cannot call for your president to be impeached. Are you mad? Trump is being impeached by the Democrats.
Right.
If it was the Republicans rallying to impeach Trump, it would be so odd. But in Kenya, somehow, somebody elected on the president's party ticket can open his mouth and say something. It doesn't make sense.
Doesn't add
Our
up.
political parties need to start living up to the billing, because if your political party should have structures, you should have party discipline. And that's why I like ODM. Even if they didn't go for Aisha Jumwa, at least they made the show of, let's try and show how we are still in charge.
Absolutely.
So that's something that also, as our leaders and the people in charge of driving this country, they need to remember.
Maga.
You know, a story is told of a man who came across a large river and built a raft to get over it. Getting to the other side, he said, oh, that raft was really good to me. Now let me carry it. And that is how he assumed an unnecessary baggage. The president needed Ruto to cross 2013, needed him to cross 2017. Now he doesn't need him anymore for any other election. He needs him to help him deliver on his legacy, which is the big four. Therefore, Ruto and this brigade need to step back and reassess their position. Why are we in this government? Yes, we helped the president cross the river. Should he now walk with us on his back? Does he still need that raft? That is not the raft that he needs. And it's becoming more and more apparent each day. And I think the last 2 weeks the president has really signaled that he means business. If you remember when Kuria was arrested, I think only 4 MPs from Central went to see him. And they left the police station saying, oh, we know there are traitors amongst us. Now they have started calling their own colleagues traitors. A week later, Kiunjuri was sacked very easily. Nobody has raised a finger. And that is, you know, some people are getting scattered. This week, Murkomen tried to force the Kiambu governor's matter to be taken to the plenary. How many votes did he get? They voted twice. He only managed to get 18 senators out of the possible 47. Yes, yet he claims to command a majority of leaders within the Senate. The president holds all the cards.
Right.
And I keep telling people, you know, you people tend, he takes himself so lightly, that everybody around him tends to underestimate him. But look at the way he's been able to fashion his administration these last 2 years. He's really managed to make it, to give it a diamond shape. And he can be able, and he should be able to deliver when he wills to. So either Ruto and his brigade fall to the president's side and support him. You know, they left that vacuum, which is the vacuum that Raila has so gracefully filled. That should have been their position.
Okay.
When the president set out to shake hands with Odinga, he knew that he had his lieutenant, who is the deputy, by his side. He needed to, to bury the hatchet with Odinga. Instead, immediately he did that. Ruto bolted out. Now, Ruto is trying to come back in. I think the strategy for me, my advice to him would be, take back your position. Make sure that you and your people are in consonance with the president, support him to the hilt if need be, displace Raila, and come 2022, claim credit for all the much you'll have achieved in the 10 years.
I'd just like to support Magal, and I'd like to emphasize how. If you study the president's speeches for the last 2 years, there are 3 things that the president is obsessed about. Number 1 is the handshake. The president is very clear that he does not want 2022 to be another acrimonious election. The moment you are his deputy or in his party and you sound like you are against that, then what the public perceives is that shift. The second thing the president is passionate about, and if you doubt it, ask Sonko, is the fight against corruption. He will spare no one. But the funniest thing, the people who seem to be on the defense of corruption, right, seem to be Murkomen, right, who keep saying this is targeting, right? It seems to be people who are in the president's own party. So it is not enough, because I see this trial within certain leaders that's not gonna work. The lip service. If you remember Alice Wahome's speech, where she starts by calling Uhuru a dictator and then calls him a very respectable leader whom she adores in the same speech, that lip service is what's going to bite them in two ways. Number 1, the president is not going to take them seriously.
Right.
And number 2, the public is going to see them as the two-faced individuals they are. You can imagine the way people were abusing the rallies last weekend.
Right.
The same people today must tweet different tomorrow and say, what a beautiful rally this Mombasa rally has been. How amazing. Oh, Murkomen, what a good speech you've given. That really is the problem that they're facing. And if they do not wake up and smell the coffee, soon they'll be coming out looking black, gray, black, and blue, beaten not by the president, but by themselves. Because I'll tell you for free, Murkomen is putting himself in a corner. Look at what is happening in the Senate. No one wants Waititu.
Yes.
But now, look at it this way. He's Sonko's lawyer. Sonko's case is going to come up in the Senate. If he is impeached, then what will happen? Soon enough, there will be the question of whether there should be a county management committee that is put in place. It will come up in Senate. What will Murkomen do? The Jubilee elections are coming. Believe you me, believe you me, you may want to call Uhuru Kenyatta a lame duck president, my friend, but I can tell you, even a dying horse can kick you to death. So they need to tread very, very carefully, because that horse is still running.
Okay. Right, and on that note, I'm going to wind up press review, and we're going to have more discussions on all the biggest political and current affairs news.